Venue contracts. They can be a simple one-pager or they can be as long as a 40-page corporate document. It's a minefield, and in this video we're going to try and walk you through that and make sure that you don't leave yourself exposed or liable, because at the end of the day, a contract is legally binding.
Okay, so venue contracts.
Doom and gloom.
Doom and gloom. No, but seriously, they can be doom and gloom because, you know, sometimes you get people and that's when they come to me, is because they found the perfect venue.
Yeah.
And somebody sends them a PDF that's 30 pages long and they're going, oh my God, I don't even know where to start with this.
Or they just sign it.
Or they sign it and then they come to you and then we have to unravel that.
Yeah.
So I think it's really, really important that people, before they even ask for the contract, think in their heads about what it is they want in their venue. So even if they start at the front door and walk through the space, walk through the area as their guests would or as they would on their wedding day, and think about all of the different things that may arise.
Completely.
Make a list of them and then look at their contract.
You know, if you've got a great venue manager or, you know, events manager that you're dealing with, then they should be able to walk you through that and answer or bring up any questions maybe that you're not thinking of. But at the end of the day, it is your responsibility. And the basics, as simple as, you know, when you get that contract or that first draft, first, as in there can be many more, you need to make sure that date, time, your names, your addresses, those contact information needs to be correct. And a lot of times it's not.
And it's really important that both names are on it. So bride and groom, or bride and groom and groom, so that both people are listed on the contract.
Responsible.
It definitely, because you don't want a situation where somebody gets cold feet and, you know, let's face it, it does happen, and they back out and whoever has signed the contract is going to be the one that's left to pay up for the venue.
Well, I do it with my own contracts. If I'm dealing with the couple directly and it's not sort of with the parents or somebody that's paying for it, it's both names, the bride and the groom, because if one of them decides not to go forward with it, the person who signed that contract is financially liable.
Absolutely.
And you need a recourse.
And I think it's important as well for people to understand the payment schedule. So, you know, if they default on sort of a quarter of the payment 6 months out, what's going to happen?
Yeah.
You know, a lot of the venue contracts are written from the venue side. Of course they are.
Well, and they're standard templates that work for corporate events, groups, any social events. You know, they're not personalized for weddings.
So I think one of the big things that I find that people forget to ask are not just the payment schedules, but little things like access time, suppliers. Maybe they can't bring their own suppliers in.
The stuff in the fine print.
It's the fine print.
That they just list off, but you might just say, oh.
That's an appendix. And I think it's really important to go through it. And if you don't understand something, ask. Like if it says that you have to use the venue as you've seen it on the day, you have to use their tables and chairs. Mm-hmm. If you don't want to, if you want to bring in your own tables and chairs, what's the story there? Do you have to pay a supplement? Can you put their tables in storage? Have they space for storage?
Yeah. Well, also, as you said, kind of access as well. You know, your wedding starts from, 3 p.m. and you've got the space till midnight. Well, what time can you load in the morning? What access? Is there an event happening in that space for breakfast? Which then means you actually don't get it until 12. You think you have it from 7 a.m.
That's a really good point, because if there are bedrooms there and you want to do a welcome bag, do you have access to do that? Can you deliver things the day before? Do they have on-site storage? Is there security? What happens if a guest leaves something? Is there a lost and found? These are things that nobody ever thinks about until the next morning and there's 10 iPhones, 3 pairs of sunglasses and 2 pairs of shoes.
And some underwear, but yeah.
Let's not talk about that. But there are always things left after a wedding. It's randomly. The detritus. And you go around gathering it up. Who is going to look after that the next day?
And who's responsible for it?
Completely. Can you bring your own suppliers in, or are you restricted to a list of suppliers? And if so, who are those suppliers? And do you pay the venue for them, or do you pay the suppliers directly? Yeah. Because if you're paying the venue, are they adding a fee on?
Exactly.
And you need to understand that, because is that making it more expensive?
Full disclosure.
It's full disclosure. And unless you ask the question, You're never going to know. And people are afraid to ask questions. I think sometimes brides especially are afraid because they think, oh, they're not going to like me if I ask that question. It's your money.
Yeah.
You need to
It's
understand this.
You're liable. You're liable for it. You know, and it's also understanding that you're liable for any, you know, damage that happens.
That's a
if your
really good
guest
point.
Sets the place on fire, you're the one that's liable for it.
It's not even that. I mean, there's lots of cases where people put holes in walls by falling backwards, but it happens when they're dancing, or else they break something in the bathroom.
Yeah.
Like, you know, do you have to pay for the repainting of that area? If a painting gets broken, if somebody falls on the piano,
yeah.
like when they're dancing, that was a great party, but you're still going to have to pay for the piano. And you need to understand all of these
what
things.
You're liable for.
What
and
you're
what
liable
you're liable
for.
for your guests. You know, it's not just you, your guests, but also, you know, if you're bringing in suppliers as well. You know, we'll talk about vendor contracts in a separate note, but, you know, you're responsible for them at the end of the day.
And do those vendors have to give an indemnity or a copy of their insurance policy to the venue?
Yeah.
You know, as the bride, you shouldn't have to worry about that. But if you're booking somebody who doesn't have proper insurance, you know, that's something to bear in mind. If it's an historic area, you know, maybe you're going to have to indemnify the venue.
Yeah.
And that is something that will affect all of the rest of the suppliers that you're going to book. Another little thing which people forget about is car parking. Can your guests leave their cars overnight? I mean, are they insured, or maybe do the cars
do they
have to
have
be,
one?
Do they have car parking?
City
Absolutely,
centre parking is at a premium. Also, I think, you know, from a starting point, it's very much ask those questions. Read it through line by line. If there's something you're not comfortable with, ask. If there's something you don't understand, which half the time, you know, because we read so many contracts for our clients, but every venue has a different policy. And every venue, you know, you can think, oh, well, this contract is quite simple. But that might be worse, because then you're just open.
And also, if it's a new venue, it could be a very simple contract because they haven't thought of all of the things. And then they could, you know, maybe reserve the right to add something in afterwards. Another point, which is a force majeure point, it's weather and natural disasters. I mean, rain, it does rain.
Terrorism, you know,
there's snow. You know, what's happening in that sort of situation, if the venue cancels on you rather than you cancelling on the venue, what is the refund policy for those sort of things? I mean, we are talking disaster here, but it is better to preempt all of those things so that you still get to enjoy your beautiful wedding day without having all of this extra stress and extra worry on you.
But also, you know, the cancellation, you talked about payment policy. It's, you know, is there contingents in there for, you know, if you postpone? You know, family, medical, somebody can't make it. You know, you book a venue a year out maybe. You know, 6 months in, a lot can happen. And you just need to know or be conscious of what you're legally required. And can you add in a clause to say that if we postpone or we reschedule or we cancel, we can reuse that money or what we've paid into it for a later date within the next 12 months, for example.
And I think it's also to be careful if you have minimum numbers that you have to fulfill or maximum numbers, be very clear with yourself that those minimum numbers that you're actually going to be able to achieve that, because if not, you're going to be paying for them anyway. So I think in conclusion, we're saying is that think about what you want from your venue, look at the contract, are they both in line? And if you're unsure, just ask the questions. Don't be afraid to ask the question.
Completely.
It's your money and it's up to you to do your own due diligence on that contract.
Completely, because nobody else is going to do it for you.
That's it. So if you don't understand, ask the question. If there's something missing, ask for it to be put in.
Or changed.
Or changed, absolutely, because as you've said, once it's signed, it's signed.
And you're responsible.
This is true. Thanks for watching, and remember, if you liked this video, don't forget to subscribe to the channel.
And do hit the bell icon, because then you'll be notified of any upcoming new videos.
Where is the bell icon?
I don't know, top, bottom? Just ring the bell.
Just ring the bell.
Watch, listen, and plan like a pro.